Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Hall with the Preview Group.
And I'm Nikki Camacho with Movement Mortgage. And today we are going to be talking about our episode 6. This is on what happens after mutual acceptance.
Yeah, in our previous episode 5, we were talking about putting together a really great contract. And once that's presented to the seller and all of the details are worked out and we've got mutual acceptance, is what we call it, everybody parties, right? Yes. And then we got to get serious because we're not done. That is the beginning of a lot of really important things to happen. And one of the first important things to happen is to make sure that I get the paperwork out to everybody. We've just spent all of this time putting together an offer and submitting it and working out all of the details on that. Now we've got to get that out to all of the support, all of the people that are a part of this transaction to help you buy this new home. One of those people on our team is our loan officer, and so we've got to get copies of the paperwork to the loan officer. We've got to get copies of the paperwork to the title and escrow. They have several functions to provide for us, and I have some responsibilities to get the paperwork turned into my office so that they know what's going on. There are requirements with the state to make sure that all of those things happen in a timely fashion, and so we've got to have a paper trail for all of that.
So on your end, what is the first thing that you do after getting me the paperwork? What's the next step?
One of the first things that I help coordinate with you, the buyer, is getting the home inspection scheduled, if that's a part of the agreement that we have with the seller. And my job there is not to coordinate the inspection itself. My job is to provide you, the buyer, a couple of names of people for you to contact and schedule the appointment for the inspector to come out. An inspector is going to take 3 to 5 hours, depending on the size of the house, to do the inspection. You get to pay for it. Fees can be anywhere between $400 to $800. It depends on the size of the home. And I think it's really important that the home buyer be there at the inspection. There's a lot of information that's shared during that time. Once we've got that inspection scheduled and completed, as a result of that inspection, there could be more inspections that are asked for. Maybe the inspector saw something that he was uncomfortable with, and so this would apply both to new construction and the sale of existing homes. We're more likely to come up with issues on the sale of an older home than on a brand new home. But one of the conditions in the inspection, a contingency, is to bring some other people in if we need to. And so there's a time frame on that. And there's a time frame on doing the inspection. It can be as short as 3, as maybe as much as 10 days after mutual acceptance that we need to get that inspection scheduled and completed. Also, another component that is really important to happen right away at the beginning of the transaction is, when we talked about it in the earlier episode, part of an offer is the earnest money deposit. This is not in addition to the monies that the borrower is, or the buyer is bringing to the table, but it's kind of your put up or shut up money. It's kind of some upfront funds to show that the seller that you're really committed. But it doesn't go to the seller. It goes to escrow.
Yes.
And I have found that the best way for me to handle that generally is that needs to get deposited to escrow by the time we're satisfied with the inspection report. So I don't like to have to carry your check around. I don't want to have to give it to escrow if we're going to back out of the transaction right away. So usually we get that deposited within the first couple of weeks of the transaction or sooner. But again, I usually wait until we've satisfied the inspection.
So I'm going to touch on the earnest money. So earnest money, when you are going to be depositing that, if you have those funds in your bank account, remember, the lender will want to see the paper trail. So we are going to get a copy of the bank statement that shows the withdrawal of the earnest money. If it's a gifted amount of funds, then we will need a gift letter, and we will need the donor's bank statement showing that those funds are available, and then proof of the deposit or the receipt dropping off at escrow, or the wire receipt. So remember, this isn't mattress money. We're not digging up any cash or dropping off that. We are doing a cashier's check, a wire, personal check. We need to make sure that those funds come from a good source.
Right.
So,
Right.
now on to
So once we're done with getting the inspection contingency all satisfied, then we let our loan officer know, because they have an important step to
clock
do.
is ticking.
Clock is ticking.
Yes. So when we can close as quickly as 14 days, that means things have to move very fast. So with that being said, the second that I receive the signed around purchase and sale agreement, I'm going to go into your application and I will input all of the information that pertains to that specific home, pull county taxes, ask you to start shopping around for homeowners insurance. I'm going to input the address, and what that does is it's going to trigger your initial disclosures. So on my end, I'm going to take a look at the purchase and sale contract, and it's going to show what title and escrow company is involved in this transaction, and I contact them and get direct title and escrow fees. I input those into your loan. So what I'm trying to do is dial it down as closely as I can to your exact figures that are going to be needed in this transaction. Then they're going to be electronically sent to you in your email, and you will electronically sign. Call me if you have any questions. Your loan officer is always available to you, and you want to make sure you're comfortable with what the payment looks like, the monthly rate, the estimated closing cost, because when you sign, it means the intent to proceed is there. The next step is I'm in communication with Dan, and he's telling me if the inspection it went well, or if there's still things to be worked on. If it went well and you guys are in agreement to move forward, then at that point, I then order the appraisal. So that is, again, it's an out-of-pocket cost for a borrower. It's a third-party fee, and it can range anywhere between $700 to $1,100. If it's a property that's really rural, has a lot of outbuildings, special qualities about it, then it might even be higher than that. But once the appraisal is paid for, then that is scheduled. Your loan then goes into underwriting. The underwriter is going to go through your loan with a fine-tooth comb. And anything needed, anything that is in addition to what you've already supplied is called a condition. And so those conditions, we reach out to you, whether it's the loan officer or the processor, to gather those extra documents. When you provide those back, we resubmit into underwriting. The appraisal comes back, and that is reviewed. And then the underwriter issues what's called a clear to close. When we have a clear to close, everybody's very excited. We are coming towards the end of this for you guys, or your new beginning. And so with that, the clear to close means documents are going to be sent over to title and escrow. Title and escrow will review, and everybody balances to make sure that we have the same amount due at the time of closing. Title and escrow will then contact you to schedule your signing, tell you here's the balance of what is due at closing, and here's how you can get those funds to us, whether you're bringing in a cashier's check or you're going to wire it directly to title and escrow. At that point in time, they'll schedule your signing. You will know how to bring the funds to closing, and we're all very excited. We're almost at the end. You sign with a mobile notary or in person at a title and escrow office. You bring your funds with you, or they're already there because you wired them. And then we're on to funding. We've got signed around documents. All parties have signed. And when we say funding, it means the lender has sent their wire. So we are now funding your loan. And the title and escrow office has funds. They've got all signed documents, and they are ready to go record. And once we have recording numbers, that means that you are now the proud owner of your new home.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And through this process, this really is a two-pronged process. So that was a really good description of what happens on the bank, on the financing side. There still are some other steps that we've been working through on our side. And so we've gotten through the inspection, and that's great. And if there was any other things that needed to be worked out, maybe we've had to renegotiate a little bit with the seller to get everything resolved. But there's also, we mentioned title. There's information that's going to come from title, which is talking about all the rules for the neighborhood, the CC&Rs, and those are things that you, the new homeowner, are going to get a chance to review and make sure you're comfortable living with. Also, potentially, if the house is on a private well, then there might be some, the lender is very likely going to require a water testing. That is something, again, that the borrower, the buyer, you get to pay for. You get to choose who's going to come out and test the water. There are a variety of water tests that can be done too. I think generally the lender is just looking for, is it drinkable? Is it potable? That's what we call it. Kind of the wrong word in my opinion, especially if anybody's had little kids. But we do call it potable water. And basically that means that there's no E. coli in it. Some people, though, might want to have deeper testing done than that to find out if there's any chemicals or minerals or anything like that in the water that really require additional treatments to it. Also, we mentioned in the earlier episode that a septic, if the home is on a septic system, making sure that that is working properly and inspected and pumped is a requirement. That is generally the cost of the seller to have that taken care of. I do really recommend, again, just like the home inspection, that you, the buyer of this new home, be there for the inspection, be there for the well testing if there's a well, and be there for the septic inspection, because it's really important to know where all these components are on the property.
Yes.
And it's important to talk to an expert about any deferred maintenance on an existing home that might have occurred, any issues that they're seeing, and really just good maintenance, just how to take care of it in the future. So to be there for those things is really, really important. If there were any repairs that were required as a result of our inspection of the home, as we get closer towards closing, an opportunity to come back and re-inspect is also a part of our agreement, so that we can get back in and say, oh yeah, the seller really did have a contractor come in and take care of fixing the railing or fixing the deck. That they didn't just do it themselves, or if they did do it themselves, then they have the right to do it. But it has to be done to a workmanship quality. And so we have the opportunity to go back and make sure that those things are in place the way they're supposed to be. And if there's anything wrong, we can back out. And all of those earlier issues, the inspection and the title report and the septic and the well, if in any of those situations we find something that really becomes scary about this property, we can back out of that transaction and you don't have to buy this particular home, and we can go shop and find another one. There may be some expenses that you've spent for the inspection, for the well testing, that those are monies that are spent. We don't get those monies back. Those are some funds that have been outlaid. But they've also, it's almost like when you buy homeowners insurance, you don't necessarily, the good thing is to not have to take advantage of that, right? You don't want your house to burn down. Well, we don't want to have to find something that's a problem with the inspection, but if we do, what good insurance that is. We get to back out of that transaction right away,
ahead of time.
and go ahead and start finding another house. And then just before Nikki gets all of that paperwork to escrow, one of the other things we get to do is do a final walkthrough of the house. This is just a day or two before closing, just to make sure that there haven't been any new things that have come up on the property. Maybe if the home was occupied, like not necessarily applying to a new construction, but making sure that there's no new holes in the walls or tears in the carpets or anything like that from moving anything in or out of the house. So that's really important to make sure we do that final walkthrough. As Nikki mentioned, then once everything is at escrow will contact you, schedule your signing to come in. You may hear us saying, hey, this is closing. That's not really closing. You're going in to sign, or the notary is coming you to sign paperwork. Similar thing is happening with the seller. Once the seller is signed, once you've signed, all of the monies have been wired from the lender to escrow. Escrow makes sure they've got everything there, all the funds from you. And as Nikki said, then they kind of do the swap of money and property, get that recorded with the county. We get our recording numbers, and once we've got those recording numbers, woohoo! Then we party. We celebrate. That's closing. Now we get to give you the keys, and you get to move in. I think another thing, though, to remember, too, is that just prior to this, maybe a week or two, you want to be reaching out to all of the utility providers. One of the things we would have gotten in the agreement is a listing of who provides water and sewer, who provides electricity, maybe gas, maybe internet. And those things all have to either get turned on or switched over to your name. You want that to be scheduled to happen the day the property becomes yours, so there's no stopping of those services. especially if gas gets stopped, they will come out and turn it off, and then they've got to come back out and turn it on, and that can delay you making dinner. So that would be a bummer. So scheduling all of that stuff ahead of time is important, and you can let them know, hey, I'm scheduled to close on the 25th of this month, and we want to have it all in our name on that date, and they will help work with you to do all of that. So that all makes sense.
I think you covered it.
Yeah, I think the only one other caveat might be, and we mentioned this in the other episode, is another type of transaction that we can have, or another component of buying a house, is selling a house. Maybe you're selling the house that you're in. So we have a contingent offer to buy that new house. Well, what happens once we get mutual acceptance on a new house, but you still have to sell yours? Do we wait to do everything? No, actually we don't. We dive right in just like any other transaction. We get the inspection taken care of right away. We go through the title and the escrow. If there's a well and a septic, we do all of those things. We might delay the appraisal a little bit, but that would be something we want to get done too. But the lending is likely not going to be able to happen until you've sold your house, and maybe we're taking funds from that sale to be able to buy and qualify for the new home. So some of the things on the financing side may not move forward right away, but a lot of the other components in the transaction do need to get taken care of and out of the way, and partly in respect the sellers. If we're going to have a problem with the inspection, they want to know that right away so that the house can go back on the market. Maybe they have to fix some things or not, but the house can go back on the market and they can look for another buyer and we can go shop for another home. So, but in the meantime, once we've got the closing and you've got your keys and we all celebrate and moving on to new adventures in a new home.
Yes. So the main thing is know that you have a good team that is working on your behalf to help support you through the process. This is like the biggest purchase that you're making is your new home. It's a huge chapter and you want to trust the right people to help you through it. And so with that being said, just make sure that you choose a great agent and a wonderful lender to help guide you through it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. And if you have any friends or family that would enjoy listening to this link and maybe they're in the process of home shopping, we would love to help them too.
Feel free to share this information with those people you care about. Thank you.